Listen closely. Can you hear it? The rhythmic, scratchy click of a wooden pencil rewinding an old cassette tape. It is a warm, tangible sound from a fading era. But then, that comforting analog rhythm slowly drifts away. It is replaced by a heavy silence, illuminated only by the cold, pale blue glow of a smartphone screen scrolling endlessly into the night. In that quiet space between the tape and the screen, a profound sense of isolation settles in. Have you ever felt like a passenger stranded at the station of time? You know you do not belong to the quiet world left behind. Yet, you never quite fit into this loud, hyper-connected digital present either. You are standing exactly in the middle. If this quiet displacement feels deeply familiar, you are not alone. Today, we are going to explore the silent psychology of the generation caught in between. Whenever sociologists or media outlets talk about generational divides, the conversation usually turns into a harsh tug of war. On one side, we have Generation X. They are often described as the cynical, fiercely independent latchkey kids who grew up fending for themselves. On the other side, we have the millennials. They are seen as the optimistic dreamers, heavily tethered to the internet from a very young age. But this binary view leaves a quiet, forgotten gap right in the middle. If you were born roughly between 1976 and 1985, you have probably read descriptions of both Gen X and millennials and thought to yourself, that is simply not me. And you would be absolutely right. You belong to a unique microgeneration known as the Xennials. This term is not just a random cluster of birth dates on a calendar. It represents a highly specific, deeply complex psychological phenomenon. You are the bridge. And being the bridge means carrying a very specific emotional weight. You harbor a profound internal conflict. Deep within your mind, there is a constant, strange friction. It is the silent collision between the grounded, deliberate calmness of your analog childhood and the relentless, exhausting velocity of the digital adulthood you were forced to adapt to. You carry the blueprints of both worlds, yet you fully reside in neither. Picture this. Your early years were completely unbothered by algorithms or screens. When you wanted to see your friends, you did not send a text. You hopped on your bicycle, rode down the street, and simply knocked on their front door. Plans were made by word of mouth, and once you walked out of your house, you were completely unreachable. The streetlights turning on or the sun going down were your only notifications to head home. In those formative years, time moved slowly. The quietness of a lazy afternoon was just that. Silence. It was not an anxious void waiting to be filled by the sudden ping of an incoming message. During those crucial early days, you learned how to be comfortably alone with your own thoughts. But then, right as you were stepping into the complicated years of high school or packing your bags for college, the world abruptly tilted on its axis. Suddenly, the analog quiet was broken by the screeching, mechanical symphony of a dial-up internet modem connecting to the World Wide Web. The way humanity communicated shifted overnight, and you were at ground zero. You went from passing handwritten notes in the classroom to waiting for the familiar buzz of Yahoo Messenger on a bulky desktop computer. You were the very first young adults to carry heavy mobile phones, carefully typing out text messages by pressing a single plastic button 3 times just to get one letter. This timing is scientifically crucial. Your brain was in its final, most critical stages of development precisely when human history made its greatest leap. Your personality did not just witness the digital revolution, it was actively shaped by it. Unlike those who came before you, you absorbed the internet while your mind was still young and highly adaptable. But unlike the digital natives who came after, Your foundation was already solidly built in the physical, tangible world. This makes you the only generation walking the earth today with two entirely different operating systems running simultaneously in your mind. Because you possess these two operating systems, your brain developed a remarkable, resilient cognitive framework. We can call this hybrid thinking. Your mind is solidly anchored by a deep, analog patience. Because your formative years involved reading physical books, manually searching through heavy encyclopedias, and waiting days or even weeks for a letter to arrive in the mail, your brain naturally understands the concept of delayed gratification. You have a built-in capacity for deep work. You know how to sit quietly with a difficult, tedious task without instinctively reaching for a screen to numb the boredom. But at the same exact time, because the digital wave crashed into your life, right as you were entering higher education and the workforce, you had no choice but to become incredibly adaptable. You were not handed intuitive touchscreens when you were toddlers. Instead, you had to learn clunky, frustrating computer programs entirely from scratch. You figured out the internet without video tutorials. This forced you to develop a ruthless, sharp cognitive agility. However, this extraordinary hybrid ability did not just make you capable. It handed you an invisible, exhausting, lifelong job. You carry what we might describe as the translator's burden. Without anyone ever asking, you became the emotional and technological shock absorber for the generations surrounding you. On one end of the spectrum, you are the designated guide for your boomer or older Generation X parents. You are the one sitting patiently at the dining room table, repeatedly explaining how a digital cloud works, how to navigate a smartphone application, or why a suspicious text message is actually a scam. You constantly pull them forward into the modern era. But then, you turn around to face Generation Z, whether they are your younger colleagues in the office or your very own children at home. And with them, your job is to translate the past. You find yourself desperately trying to explain the immense fading value of enduring silence. You try to teach them the necessity of slow, uninterrupted discipline and the quiet power of doing just one thing at a time without needing instant validation. You are perpetually mediating between a generation that is intimidated by the new world and a generation that is completely disconnected from the old world. Being this permanent bridge is a beautiful thing, but it is an overwhelmingly heavy, emotionally draining responsibility. And this relentless pressure to constantly adapt, to always be the competent pioneer and the reliable teacher, has created a deep, hidden psychological barrier. It has birthed a very specific, generational form of digital imposter syndrome. There is a profound, heartbreaking irony at play here. The Xennial generation literally laid the bricks for the modern digital landscape. You built the early online forums, you coded the foundational platforms, and you defined the digital culture that everyone lives in today. Yet, in the quietest corners of your own mind, you still feel like a guest in this digital house. Deep down, you know you are a digital immigrant. But society demands that you constantly put on a mask to blend in seamlessly with the digital natives. Whenever a new social media platform explodes in popularity, or a massive technological shift sweeps the globe, you instinctively push yourself to learn it so you do not lose your professional or social edge. You project absolute competence. But underneath that polished survival instinct, there is a lingering, nervous whisper. You live with a subtle, persistent anxiety. You are secretly terrified that one day you simply will not have the energy to keep up anymore. You fear that the relentless pace of the world will finally outrun you. The mask will fall, and you will be exposed as someone who is, at their very core, fundamentally obsolete. This exhausting performance of competence leads directly to a profound modern paradox. As a generation, You are incredibly fluent in the language of the Internet. You know exactly how to curate a digital presence, how to navigate complex software, and how to communicate perfectly across multiple online platforms. Yet, despite your absolute mastery of these tools, you are the people who yearn for total disconnection the most fiercely. There is a steep, hidden emotional cost to your constant adaptation. It is a quiet, simmering burnout. You are perpetually downloading the latest updates to your own mind just to stay relevant in a world that refuses to slow down. The sheer mental energy required to continuously bridge the gap between your analog roots and the relentless digital frontier leaves you completely depleted at the end of the day. But beneath that exhaustion lies an even deeper, more complex emotion. It is a very specific type of mourning. You carry the grief of being unreachable. You vividly remember a time when leaving your house meant leaving the entire world behind. You remember the absolute freedom of being physically absent, of knowing that no one could demand your immediate attention until you walked back through your own front door. That profound, silent liberty is gone forever. Now, you carry a device in your pocket that ensures you are always accessible, always on the grid, and always expected to respond. And in the quietest moments of your life, you miss that lost world of unreachability with a beautiful, heartbreaking intensity. This profound craving for disconnection entirely dictates how you navigate the darkest chapters of your life. Have you ever wondered why, when faced with a sudden crisis or deep personal trauma, Xennials seem so strangely, almost unnervingly, quiet compared to everyone else? When the ground shakes beneath them, Generation Z will often immediately broadcast their fractured emotions onto the digital stage, actively seeking a rapid community of empathy and shared healing. On the other end, Generation X tends to swallow the pain whole, enduring the storm in solitary, stoic silence. But you do neither. When tragedy strikes, you instinctively activate both of your internal operating systems at the exact same time. First, you violently pull the plug. You retreat into your analog sanctuary, wrapping yourself in total silence and absolute isolation to protect your raw, bleeding emotions. You go completely off the grid to simply breathe. But while your heart rests in that dark, quiet room, your mind boots up the digital machinery. You open a private browser tab and relentlessly research your own psychological wounds. You consume articles, search for behavioral patterns, and coldly analyze your trauma with the precision of a digital surgeon. You quietly become your own secret therapist, dissecting the pain until you understand it completely, long before you ever whisper a single word about it to the outside world. To the Xennials listening today, you are not a forgotten generation lost in the middle. You are the vital anchor. Without you, the rapid, violent leap from the physical world to the digital realm would have fractured our society completely. You are the ones holding the fragile past and the overwhelming future together. I know exactly how incredibly exhausting it is to constantly translate between two entirely different eras. I know how heavy being that permanent bridge can feel every single day. But please remember that your silent endurance is your absolute greatest strength. You possess a profound, grounded depth that this relentlessly fast-paced world desperately needs right now. Before you scroll away to another screen, I want to ask you for a small favor. No matter what generation you belong to, take a deep breath. Close your eyes for just one moment. Try to remember one specific, comforting analog sound from your childhood. Was it the heavy clack of a film camera, the soft hum of television static, or the slow spin of a rotary phone? Whatever that sound is, share that quiet memory with us in the comments below. Let us remember that fading world together.